For the first time during the Ben Roethlisberger era, when Roethlisberger is playing, the Steelers are underdogs at home against the Baltimore Ravens. Now, he's missed 3 Ravens games at home over the course of his career. They lost all of them by 3 points, 2 in overtime. But this is the first time that the Steelers are underdogs in that game against the Ravens with Ben Roethlisberger available. Mike Tomlin met with reporters today. He always does it on Tuesday, and he talked about whether or not the Steelers can indeed turn things around this weekend with their arch rivals from Baltimore coming to town. Here's Tomlin.
Mike, you mentioned the history of this rivalry. Everybody's aware, in your face, blood and guts, physical football. Are you still that kind of team?
We'll see on Sunday, won't we? You know, like I mentioned earlier, it's put up and shut up time. And so, you know, talking doesn't get it done. I can quell you in that question with an answer, but it's not real. What we do in that stadium on Sunday is what's real. And so we're not seeking comfort. We're not trying to, you know, quell the masses, if you will. You know, we stunk it up, and so we're gonna wallow in our stench for a while and wait for our next opportunity to play football.
Yeah, I think he was probably rattled as Joe Burrow was surprised that the Steelers didn't have more punch in a huge game on the road against a division rival. It was that Browns game where Pittsburgh went in and won just a few days after the USC mic drop moment where I picked the Steelers to win that game because I thought, hey, we got a pissed off Mike Tomlin this week. The Steelers are going to show it. I thought we'd see that same thing from the Steelers this past weekend, and they got blown out. So I detect from that, Shireen, that Mike Tomlin doesn't quite know what he's got right now by way of collective will in the locker room. And you're starting to hear guys making suggestions. Minka Fitzpatrick with suggestions about what they should do at practice. Chase Claypool wanting music and more fun. These are cracks in the foundation of a program that has been dominated by Mike Tomlin the way that a college coach dominates a college football team. I'm starting to sense things are getting a little wobbly right now for the Steelers.
Well, and Tomlin was very vague on what those changes are going to be, but they've been called out, Mike, by former players. Ryan Clark said that the defense lacked physicality and energy in that game. And Mike Tomlin was asked about that today, and he agreed with them. He said those former players have been in our locker room. They know. So he was agreeing with them that there's a physicality and an energy that's lacking on this team. And I do wonder, Mike, looking back, do the Steelers have regrets that they brought Ben Roethlisberger back? Do they wish they had moved on and tried to find a franchise quarterback for this season to replace him and get ready to move on? Do you think they do? You think they look back and go, we should have done something else at quarterback?
Well, I was surprised when they worked out the deal to keep him, and I know there's some rumors ricocheting around the NFL now that the Steelers were surprised he accepted the $4 million pay cut, that they thought they were making him an offer that wasn't so low that it was insulting, but it was too low for him to take, and he would have said, thanks, I'm moving on. The problem is, what would they have done at quarterback if that had happened? Exactly. Were they going to sign Andy Dalton? Were they going to sign Ryan Fitzpatrick? I mean, this all came to a head just before the start of the league year, last February, March time frame, but I don't know what their plan B would have been, and that's the problem they face now. And, hey, look, it's funny because some of the narratives that I was pushing before the season, they got stale real fast, just like the Rams. I'll believe it when I see it. Matthew Stafford can't stay healthy. Yeah. They were 7-1. I shut up about all that. Well, now I can unzip my lips and say, see? And I said back in March when they did this deal that they'll regret it by November. I didn't say by the start of November or the end of November, and here we are November 30. And I think as we head into December, we can pronounce judgment on the fact that the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger both regret that they went for one more year. I think that's a fair assessment of where they are right now, especially with this indication that the team is fundamentally different and that the guy who has been in charge of that team since 2007, he's lost his magic a little bit. I'm not saying, look, and I'm not one of these, because there's plenty of people out there, and there's a segment of Steelers fans, the moment that they hit adversity, you hear them say, fire Mike Tomlin, fire Mike Tomlin, fire Mike Tomlin. And as we always say, Shireen, if you do that, somebody else is going to hire him the next day. But there is something to be said. This is like Andy Reid, Philadelphia, 2012 time frame. There is something to be said for the possibility that even with dramatic changes to a team every given year, you get to a point where the message no longer is received. That may be going on in Seattle right now. A decade, a little more than a decade, maybe you get to a point where it just doesn't work anymore. You've used every tool in the tool bag over and over and over again, and it just doesn't take like it used to. I hadn't thought of that until we played that clip today. I hadn't heard that clip, hadn't seen that clip. I'm starting to think that we may be getting to the point where, right or wrong, good or bad, whatever the case may be, Mike Tomlin possibly has been in Pittsburgh too long, and he's possibly getting to the point where his message isn't, you know, how many times have we heard him say we seek no comfort? How many times, if you're in the locker room, do you hear we seek no comfort before it's just words? You know, the first time you hear it, it's like, wow. Yeah. Second time, it's still, you know, after about 10,000 times you hear we seek no comfort, I don't think it's got the same impact anymore.
Well, we're looking for volunteers and not hostages, right? We've heard that a million times too. So yeah, maybe it doesn't resonate anymore. I expect Mike Tomlin to be there next year, but I don't think this team has a plan in place, a succession plan in place at quarterback. So how long do they go here before they get good again? I mean, they're 5-5-1, Mike, and they have 5 teams that they're chasing in the wild card race. So at some point, do you say, hey, Ben, we're putting you on injury reserve for the rest of the year, and this is the way out, and we're going to go play Dwayne Haskins to see what we have in him, because Mason Rudolph ain't it. But this team needs some changes at the end of the year, whatever those changes are. I know they're going to try to make some changes right now and see if they can get in as a wild card team, but I don't see this team, even if they get in as a wild card, Mike, what are they going to do in the postseason? One and done? They'll get blown out in the first round.
Well, just like they did last year, although last year it was a stunner. But look, this is a team that as of right now, and I say this fully aware of the possibility that they'll turn it around and they'll win 6 in a row to finish the season. Because we've seen with this 17-game season now, the highs don't last. The lows don't last. And we're ready to anoint a team, and then they start losing games. And then they start losing games, and we're ready to write them off, and then they start winning games. So who the hell knows what's going to happen with the Steelers the rest of the way. But from 1-3 to 5-3 to 5-5-1, they're in a down cycle, and it just feels like this is more troubling than it was the last time around. It feels like something is fundamentally changing within that team that they're not going to be able to solve.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.